So it is Saturday morning and I wanted to do a morning weekend vlog because I have not updated the channel in a little while on a lot of stuff, on like anything that I've been reading. I've kind of been a little bit MIA for the last couple weeks, so I wanted to just do like a simple Saturday morning vlog. Last night we had a Bible study here, so the apartment's like a little bit messy, so I was just gonna tidy up and make my breakfast and maybe sit down and read a little bit. And I just decided I was gonna bring you guys along with me. Okay guys, so I got ready for the day, but I'm just staying at home, so nothing crazy. just my T-Swift hoodie and my leggings and my coffee. And we are gonna talk about some books because we're approaching the end of March, and I feel like I kind of ticked off some of the books that were on my anticipated reads for March, but then some books were kind of totally just thrown in there super randomly. And so here's some of the books that you guys did not expect me to read because I didn't talk about reading them until I was reading them. So the first book that I picked up was a book of the month pick from January of last year that I've been meaning to read like all last year and I never got around to it. And that was What Lies in the Woods. This book was about like a tragic incident happened to a few girls. They were found in the woods one day when they're young, and they testify against this man saying that they saw him out in the woods that day. He goes to jail, and then it's like 20 something years later, and the main character is the girl that put that man in jail, and she's saying that she's not really sure that that's who she saw, but that she was told to say that's who she saw. And so they're basically trying to solve the mystery of what actually happened that night, and was that man in charge of, like, was he guilty for the things that happened that night? This book was really good. I will say, I think this was like a 4.5, 4.75 for me. Like, honestly, really good. It was very disturbing and very, like, it was a little icky. Like, I don't know. There was like parts about obviously what was at the time happening to a lot of little girls. And so they didn't go into like too much description, but it was still just a little bit of a trigger warning. So, definitely a little bit icky, but it was so good and very much kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time. Like, I could not wait to figure out what happened. Was he the one who did it? What happened that night? Very, very good. Definitely recommend this one. Loved it. Could not believe that I did not read this sooner. And then after I read this book, it kind of got me on like I really wanted another murder mystery type. And this month's book of the month, I didn't show off my book of the month opening this month, but this month I picked Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera, I'm gonna guess is how you say her name. This book intrigued me because my very first read of the year was a Lisa Jewell book, and it was None of This Is True. And it was a book that I raved about when I first read it because it was told from the perspective of, like, it wasn't a murder mystery, but it was a mystery, like, where you're trying to figure out who's telling the truth, who's telling the lies, who do you believe, who do you not believe. And it was told in like a podcast style. So all of, like, it would be like podcast episodes, and when you listen to the audiobook, all of the podcasts like actually sounded like you were listening to a podcast, which was very cool. I raved about this book for months. I kept telling people, like, oh, if you're in the mood for a mystery, go read None of This Is True. Like, it was so good. It was like weird, and like you really did not know who to believe. You think you know who to believe, and then you don't. Very, very interesting. And so this book intrigued me because it's also a book that's about a podcaster, but he is solving a murder mystery that the court basically decided that there wasn't enough evidence to really figure out who killed this girl. And so they just kind of closed the case. It's a cold case. And so this guy who has a murder mystery podcast decides that he's going to go back to the hometown and he's going to solve this murder and figure out who did it. And the main character is actually the #1 suspect that everybody thinks did it. And so this one was very, very good, very intriguing. I could not believe I read 2 murder mysteries in a row that were like this has now become one of my favorite murder mysteries. Like if people are gonna ask me for a recommendation, it's gonna be either none of this is true for a mystery, or if you're wanting a murder mystery, listen for the lie. This book was so, so, so good. I loved it. So after I read Listen for the Lie, I was, not that I was like done with mystery, but I had read 2 mysteries in a row. And so I was like, all right, let's try to take a break from mystery and let's pick up something else. And so my next book was another book of the month. I really was just hitting it with all the book of the month books. So thank you to Book of the Month for all of these amazing reads. Because my next book was Ready or Not. This one was one of, let's see, it was February's book pick. I actually think I picked 2 of February's books because I couldn't decide between one or the other. So yeah, this one was Ready or Not. This is a story about a girl that has a one-night stand, and she ends up finding out that she's pregnant. And it was already unfortunate because this main character like never just has one-night stands. It was literally like this random thing. She could not believe that she did that, and then she finds out that she's pregnant. And she goes to tell her best friend, but it's really hard because her best friend is married and has been trying to have a baby for like months and months and months, and they're not getting pregnant. It's actually, I think she's been trying for like years at this point. It was like a long time that she was trying to have a baby and they were not getting pregnant. And so her going and telling her best friend that she had literally a one-night stand and got pregnant is very hard because she knows that her best friend's not going to take it very well. And so it's very awkward. She doesn't really want to talk to her best friend about like all the weird pregnancy stuff because she doesn't want to feel like she's like rubbing it in her face. And so the person that she ends up going to the most is her best friend's older brother that she's been also, they were kind of like a trio. Like they were all best friends when they were young. And he's recently moved back into town, and so they've been hanging out a lot. He's bringing her lunch, he's taking her out, they're talking about pregnancy stuff, and slowly but surely she can't tell if she's starting to fall for him. So this book was very cute. I definitely really liked it. It was definitely a little new agey, which is totally fine, but some of the like references or things, like I just was kind of like, oh wow, this book was written recently, because I don't know, there was just like references and stuff that I remembered thinking, which now of course I can't think of any of them, but I just remembered thinking like, okay, that's a little weird. Sometimes pop culture references kind of take me out of a book, but it wasn't enough to fully distract from the plot line and from the actual story and from how much I actually kind of cared about the characters. Like I was like, I needed to know what was going to happen to Eve. That's the main character. Like, especially in the beginning, you're like wondering, is she going to keep the baby? Obviously it's a book all about the pregnancy, so you assume that she is, but they do question whether she's going to. And but it was just, honestly, it was really cute. I definitely liked it. Not one of my favorite romances I've ever read, but it was different. I've never really read a romance that's like sole focus is on a pregnancy of an unmarried woman. And so it was very different and interesting, and I definitely liked it, but this one was a little bit lower on my ranking than like the last 2 that I'd read. This one was probably like a 3.5, 4-star for me, which is still pretty high. I would say that's still pretty good. It was definitely a good book. Nothing bad about it, just not one of my favorites that I've ever read. So those are actually the last couple books that I read. But I also wanted to bring this one up. I have not read this yet, but I just received this one, and I haven't made a video since. So what I recently got was my pre-order of Happily Ever After by Lynn Painter. Those of you who watch the show regularly know how much I love and adore Lynn Painter. She is one of my favorite romance authors. She writes adult, young adult, anything that you could want. She writes it in romance. I love her books. So she has two, well, now this one's out, but she had two coming out, this one and a young adult romance that is the second book to Better Than the Movies. That one is coming out, I believe, at the end of this year, and this one was just released this month. So I have not read this one, but I'm very intrigued and interested to get to this one. So this might be one of my next reads. I'm not really sure. So now I'm gonna show you guys my options for my next reads, and I'm gonna spend the day reading. So this is one of them. This is probably, like, this is a top choice. It's also not very long. I expected it to be a little bit longer, which is actually kind of fun because I love a quick, like, get to the point, a quick little romance. Like, it's like the perfect palate cleanser is a short little romance like this. Then, as many of you know, I am in the middle of a Throne of Glass reread, and so I am currently on Queen of Shadows. So this is another one. I've got my bookmark already at chapter 1, so I'm ready to get started on this. Look at my adorable bookmark. That is from, I can't remember where that's from right now. My best friend got that for me, but it's called Forever Booked. That's what it's called. I will put the link in the description down below for that shop. That's an Etsy shop. But this is Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. It is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series out of 8. And I was just making sure that was actually the 5th book. So this is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series. After this book, I think I'm going to do the tandem read of Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. So I brought those out here because I already tabbed them in everything. So I tabbed them. You start with Empire of Storms first, and you just start at chapter 1, or Nightfall is actually the first chapter. And then you're gonna read till you hit the first or the next little sticky tab, so chapter 6, and that's when I would know where to stop. And then from there, you move on to the first portion of Tower of Dawn, which I believe is only chapter 1 first, but, and then you read till that sticky, and then you just keep going back and forth. I've never done the tandem read before, so this would be something very new for me. Very exciting because this is my 3rd read through of the Throne of Glass series, and I have yet to read them this way. The only problem is I am so busy throughout the week that I don't really have a ton of time to usually sit down and read the physical copy. I listen to audiobooks like a maniac. And so what I'm nervous about is that I don't know how long it'll take me to get through these by, like, actually sitting down and reading them as opposed to listening to the audiobook for them, because I can get a lot of stuff done while I'm listening to an audiobook, but I can't get as much done if I'm sitting down and actually physically reading them. So that's the only hard part. And then the last book is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I've been wanting to read this one forever. It's super random that this is like a thrown into the mix. I've got, like, it's such a random book, but I was just, like, looking at my shelves. This is one I've been wanting to read forever. I love V.E. Schwab, or Victoria Schwab, both are her, but yeah, I've only read a few of her books and I've never read this one, and so I've been dying to read this one, and that was just thrown into the mix. So I'm not really sure what I'm gonna read next, but I will have to update you guys in the next video. So thank you for joining me this morning on my cleaning of the house and getting ready and going through the books that I read this month and picking my next book. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next time. Bye.